Welcome to tonight's session. I'll introduce myself. My name is Barbara, and I'm a Sustainability Education Officer for Willoughby Council. Thank you for coming tonight to this webinar that we are running in partnership with 4 other councils, which are Ku-ring-gai Council, Cove Council, Mosman, and North Sydney councils. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that wherever we are today, we are all on the lands of Aboriginal traditional owners. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, both past, present, and emerging, and thank them for sharing with us their immense knowledge on how to care for this country. So tonight's session is the 3rd in our Introduction to Sustainable Building series, which has been run by experts from Renew. Tonight, the topic is all about water, so we'll explore how to integrate a good water management plan into your new build or renovation, both for inside your home and for your garden. In the last 2 webinars that we have already run, we discussed first how to design your house for resilience and how to select and source sustainable building materials. And if you missed those and would like to watch them, I will send a link to the recordings to everyone after the session in the next couple of days. So as councils, we are running these webinars because we really think it's important to assist our community to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions as well as reduce their energy and water usage. We know that as residents, we all have a direct impact on the planet through our homes, and improving our built environment has a significant impact on how we can achieve sustainable living and reduce the resources we use, but without compromising on our comfort. The expert that will be doing his presentation tonight is Michael Hughes. I'm very excited to be listening to what he has to present. We have worked with him in the past. Mike discovered permaculture over 10 years ago by being inspired to leave the mining industry, slow down, and tread lighter. He renovated his house as an owner-builder, he completed a permaculture design certificate, and he started the company Let's Grow Shopping, whose goal is to help others become the change that they wish to see in the world. Mike opens his demonstration gardens during the Sydney Edible Garden Trail, and his home has been featured during Sustainable House Day. He's also appeared on Gardening Australia if you'd like to do some Googling and find the video. So without further ado, I will hand over to Mike. And yes, thank you, Michael, for being here tonight.
No problem. Thanks, Barbara. Thanks for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so I'm talking today on behalf of Renew, who are a member-based non-profit organisation working to transform Australian homes for climate and energy resilience. Renew's been around for about 40 years, and they were promoting solar before anyone really knew what solar was. And today, Renew publishes 2 magazines, Sanctuary Magazine and Renew Magazine. And the online articles that you can find are fantastic. They're a great source of information and cover quite a bit of what we're doing today. Renew run events such as Sustainable House Day, which is coming up on April the 21st. And they also conduct research and advocate for fair energy transition for low-income households. Okay, so today we're going to cover a bit more. The first section is about a bit of a broad look at the water landscape, so water-sensitive urban design. And then we'll focus in on the house and garden with rainwater management and using plants to help with climate control. And we'll also look at some strategies for cleverly distributing stormwater and keeping your garden hydrated. And then lastly, with a bit of a view to firewise gardening. A lot of the information in this presentation shows various options available, and there's a lot of detail at the end in the resources section. And like Barbara mentioned, we'll have a time for a Q&A session at the end. So water-sensitive urban design. What exactly is that? Well, without water, nothing lives, including us. And as we've seen with the floodwaters, even again this weekend in Richmond, water can destroy as easily as it creates life. And so we can't underestimate it. Our urban designs are having negative impacts on the landscape, and water-sensitive urban design is a step in the right direction to remedy that. And if you take a look at this picture, forested land, up to 85% of the water that falls on forested land is evaporated or transpired back into the atmosphere, which creates this cooling effect that you feel when you walk through the bush and it creates more rain. And if you take the extreme example, like the Amazon rainforest, that's got its own weather system. So it's creating its own rain by just transpiring the water that falls back into the atmosphere. About 15% of the water that falls on forested land infiltrates through the soil down into the water table, and then very slowly percolates. So over, hundreds of years, percolates through the rocks at a gradual, constant rate into the river and run off to the ocean. If you contrast that with the urban environment, only about 15% of the water evaporates into the atmosphere. And so there's not much cooling effect, and there's no increase in the precipitation in the rainfall on the land. About 85% of the water hits hard surfaces, and our general rule is to direct it as quickly as possible into the stormwater system and run off into the river together with all the pollution that we've created that's lying around on the surface. Hardly anything percolates down into the water table, so we're not recharging that system, and we're obviously increasing the flood risk. So there's no gradual, constant feed into the river. It's these intermittent, when rain events happen, intermittent, large-scale flooding water goes into the river system. And so if you're doing a reno, or you're buying a block of land and building a new house, it's a really good idea to look at what happens to the water on your site and your general area before there were houses in development. Where does the water enter your property, and where does it leave? And what kind of volume flows through, and where does it go? And is there a particular part of your property it flows through, or is it sheeting over the whole area? So the main principles that fit in with water-sensitive urban design are slowing the water down, soaking it up, and letting it sink in. And by doing that, you're making the water work harder. And you can use gravity as your friend to help you do that. It's not something you have to power. This picture of the Champagne Tower illustrates what I'm talking about quite well. If you imagine the water flowing in your property is the bottle, so that's the highest point in your land, and then the lowest point on your property is the table. Current urban design is remove all the glasses and just pour the champagne straight on the table and let it run off. So you're wasting all that resource. Whereas if you're working in tandem with water-sensitive urban design, you're pouring it into all these glasses. Each glass collects the water and distributes it and stops it getting to the table as quickly and makes it work for you while it's going down through all these levels. All of this is very property specific, so people living in different environments and in different areas are going to experience the water flowing through their property differently. And so they all have their own unique challenges, and getting inspiration and ideas from many sources is the key to solving your own issues. So things like sustainable house day, edible garden trails, just chatting to your neighbours and your family about what happens in your immediate area is a great thing. And another resource that you can look at is this yourhome.gov.au. I remember downloading this in, 2013 before I started my reno. And it's a great guide just covering the basics behind a sustainable home. And again, this covers some of the content we're discussing tonight. So you need to have a plan before you start any of this. So you need a plan for the mains, the stormwater, the grey water, and the irrigation. And the better you can plan it, the better it will work. And I'm just going to put a pointer on and just talk to this photo. This is of my back garden. And I just wanted to explain the sort of Champagne Tower effect in action. So my garage collects rainwater that goes into this 10,000 litre tank down the side of the garage. The overflow from that tank goes down under the pavement and up into this horizontal stormwater pipe. So it's just a normal piece of 90mm stormwater pipe, and it's got holes drilled all the way along the length of it. So it's dead level, holes drilled all the way along, and the water fills up the bottom half of that pipe and pours out of all those holes evenly. And it's about 15 meters long down this garden bed. So the garden bed gets watered all evenly, all at the same time. When the garden bed is saturated, I put an ag pipe in the bottom of that garden bed to get rid of the excess water so it doesn't just fill up like a bath. It flows out of the bottom into my pond. It fills my pond up. The pond overflows into this garden bed, and then off to the right is the downhill, and it flows off into the rest of my garden. So you can see what I'm trying to get at with you're filling the champagne glasses up one by one as it moves around your garden. And just on having a plan, the pipes, once you've got all this sorted out, pipes are a real pain to move and plumbers are not cheap. So having this plan in place in the first place is definitely a positive thing. We're concentrating on the home. The New South Wales Resilient Homes Programme has released a detailed flood resilience guide for new and existing homes. And that's got some good ideas, but it's mainly I think it's mainly aimed at the people, say, in the Richmond or Lismore areas, where you've got literally flood water running through your house. I don't see very much of that on the North Shore of Sydney, but what I do see around here is water ingress just flowing through the rocks and from the bedrock into living spaces underneath your house. So a lot of people have built in extensions or excavated under the house to put a rumpus room in or something. And they've placed the wall right up against the rock. So when we have a really heavy downpour, the water percolates through the rock and straight in through the wall of their rumpus room. And so you need to have this literally watertight plan to keep your walls dry in the heaviest downpour. Another simple technique for keeping the water away from your actual house is just to have the eaves so that the ground immediately around the home is slightly drier. The water's not just pouring straight against your walls. We'll talk later about using garden landscaping to reduce the impacts of heavy rain and move it around your house rather than through it. So one of the first things you can do to assess what water you use and where it's going is do a water audit of your household. And so this gives you pointers on how much ideally you need to harvest if you're thinking about getting water tanks. And it gets you thinking about the grey water usage and how you can get that into the garden. And it's all about changing your habits, and that's possibly the biggest water saving you can make. I put a household water audit worksheet in the resources at the end of this presentation that breaks it down into each individual action you use water in, such as washing your hands and having a shower. And then to assist you even more, there's the WELS scheme, the Australian Water Efficiency Labelling Standards. Every product such as shower heads, toilets, washing machines, dishwashers, taps and flow controllers, they're rated for their water efficiency. And this makes us as consumers a bit more aware of what we're doing when we purchase things. So water consumption also influences the energy consumption for appliances that use hot water, such as dishwashers. So lower water use is better, providing it doesn't compromise the appliance's effectiveness. And you can go to that website there, www.waterrating.gov.au, to find out more. Just on the hot water system, a simple technique. I would bet that most people, when they go in the shower, they turn it on, stand there for a minute or so while the cold water just runs straight into the grate. And then when the hot water comes through, that's when you get in and start having your shower. One simple way of minimizing the water wastage is putting your external hot water system nearest to the rooms that use the hot water. So the key point there is the volume of water in the pipe between the hot water system and the shower head. So the less volume there is, the less water you've wasted. It's a real simple tip. And then there's grey water. I'll just quickly talk about the three kinds of water so we understand exactly what we're talking about. So you've got toilet water, which is full of obviously feces, bad bacteria. This is black water, goes straight into the sewage system. If you're off-grid, people treat that, but in urban areas, that's generally not what you do. And I don't even think it's legal to do in an urban area. The kitchen sink is in this sort of grey area between black and grey water. You can have oil and meat residues go down your kitchen sink, which again will end up full of pathogens and not very nice bacteria. You can treat this, you can buy products that will treat it, but for the purposes of this presentation, we're just going to treat grey water as the hand basin, shower and laundry. So grey water needs to be free flow into the garden. You can't let it sit in a tank for more than 24 hours. Otherwise, it just breeds bad things, bad bacteria. It gets you to change your habits. Again, you might want to wash your hands more often in the hand basin rather than the kitchen sink if you knew that water was going to water your garden. So you can save water that in all sorts of ways by using it differently around the home. You also need to go through your cleaning products to make sure they contain no really hazardous or harmful chemicals. The best way of keeping the bad bacteria out of grey water is not to put anything hazardous in there in the first place. You can't use grey water on vegetables. The leafy greens will soak up the everything in that water into the leaves, and then you're going to ingest them, which is not a good idea. But they're perfect. Sorry, grey water is perfect for ornamentals and any kind of tree, even fruit trees. So any woody stem will not let the bacteria into the produce in the tree. So a simple grey water system. The picture on the left there, you've just got the hand basin. So the waste pipe goes to a diverter valve that you can switch between grey water or the sewage system, and the water just flows straight out into the garden. So again, you're not storing it, you're just making it free flow directly into your garden beds. You can use an ag pipe like the middle photo there, which is basically a slotted pipe, holes all the way down it. Most of the water comes out at the start of that pipe, but if there was extended flow, it would obviously move further down that pipe and be let out there. A drip line pipe, which is the purple one, they color it purple so that you can definitely tell it's grey water rather than town water. That's more likely to let the water out all the way down the pipe. So the whole pipe will fill up and then start to leak the water out everywhere all at the same time. So it's more of an even watering method. And with both of these methods, you can place the pipe on the soil, but then you would ideally not let the grey water be exposed to air. You want to put a thick layer of mulch over the top of those pipes and keep the grey water sort of in the soil. The soil's bacteria helps break down stuff in the grey water. And what most people think of when we're talking about saving water is water tanks, and the next few slides are discussing that. And so the first decision you have to make is whether the water tanks are going to be supplying the house, the garden, or both. You can just have a water tank supplying the toilet, which is not a bad use of the water, but you need to be aware of what you want to use it for to know how much you want to store, how much you want to harvest. Any water destined for a tank needs to be as clean as you can make it. There's a few things that go into a water tank system, and maintaining this system is a lot easier than getting inside the water tank and cleaning out the inside of the tank. So it definitely pays to do the maintenance up front. The first step in that system is using the gutter guard and stopping the leaves getting into the gutters and getting into your water pipes in the first place. You can also use a leaf diverter, which is one of those things that goes directly below the gutter, and the leaves just sweep straight off the surface and the water flows through the grate. And then when you've got the water in the pipes, so just put the laser pointer back on. When it's in the down pipes, these horizontal pipes are coming from the roof, and then it hits the vertical section, which is a first flush system. And so if you've had a dry period and the roof has got full of dust, few leaves, and a bit of muck, when it finally rains, all that muck gets washed straight into the gutters and straight down those pipes. And so the vertical part of the pipe fills up. All the sludge ends up in the bottom down here. It gradually fills up and then overflows with much cleaner water going straight into your tank. When it gets to the tank, there is a basket on the top of the tank, which stops the mozzies breeding in your tank. And that collects any large, also collects a lot of large debris that gets through all these parts of the system. On the bottom of the first flush is a dripper. So the pipe doesn't stay full of water forever. It drips off into the stormwater system down below. There is a bit of sludge in the bottom, so it pays to have a screwable cap so you can completely remove the bottom of the pipe and let go of all the leaves and sludge that is built up in the bottom. And you need to do that probably once every major rain event. The overflow from the tank, which is this pipe, again goes straight into the stormwater system usually. Oh, that's the basket, I should say, on top of the tank that stops the mozzies breeding, and it collects a bit of muck. So you need to get that so you can maintain all these things. You don't want to put too many things around the tank so that you can get to these and empty them out once in a while. So how big does the tank need to be? Renew have this fantastic tool on their website called the Tankulator, and that helps you work out, depending where you are in the world, what your rainfall is, how much usage you have with your water bills. That will help you work out how big your tank needs to be. Most commercial tank manufacturers have some kind of a calculator on their website. Some are great and some are a bit too simplistic for me, but if you try out a few, you'll get a general feel for how much water you're going to have to save. I've included a sample water tank volume calculation I did for my own house in the resources at the end of this presentation. Your required volume doesn't all have to be in one tank. It actually pays for a bit of insurance to have 2 or more tanks in case one leaks or needs maintenance. And there's all kinds of different tanks you can put in. There's the usual ones up against the wall. You can put them under the house, under the deck. There's the one there with the bladder. That's if you're really space poor and you've got a space underneath your house, the bladder's a great option. But there's a lot more maintenance and I guess technical stuff goes on. You need a pump to get the water out. So there's a bit more going on with the bladder than most tanks, but there's still a great option if you've got no space. The 2 photos on the right are essentially an olive barrel, which is 220 litres. That's catching water, off the roof of my chicken coop, and it's got a tap on the side that's my chicken water, so they're drinking rainwater rather than fluoride town water. And then there's IBCs, intermediate bulk containers, and they contain 1,000 litres each. You can hook these up together, so that was 2,000 litre system. They're portable, so if you're renting, they are easily movable from house to house. Once they're empty, of course, a bit heavy with the water in it. And you don't have to have a tank that sticks out. You can use trellis and plants to disguise your prominent tank. That's a passion fruit vine. Or you can make it landscaped into the background so it doesn't stand out so much. Again, you want to have access to that tank to empty the basket, so you can't have too much things around it so that you can't get to it. Okay, moving on to the garden. So the #1 choice for a water-saving garden design are native plants. They're especially good for low maintenance and time-poor gardeners. And councils have lists of suitable plants, local plants that you can put in that grow in the bush around you. I remember when we moved into our first house, I literally took photos of where I wanted to plant all my plants and went to a garden centre, and they suggested the plants, where to put them, and 2 years later they were up and racing. So yeah, very easy option to get a quick garden going. This photo actually illustrates another good point, which is you want to create this forest effect. to provide the cooling effect around the house, that transpiration with cooling air. So you've got trees taller than the house, bushes higher than your head, waist-high herbs and ground covers to provide all the layers of the forest to keep the soil moist. When you're doing the landscaping around your house, the contours are a must-have, in my opinion. You really need to know where the water flows around your house, and contours are the best way of doing that. So the water flows at right angles to the contour, and it creates, when you've got garden beds on the contour, they create a much more natural looking landscape rather than the straight lines and angles that everyone seems to be obsessed with. That photo there, we're looking down the contour, so you're looking along the contour. So the water flows from right to left. It hits one garden bed, and as it moves down, when it hits the garden bed, it has to move either right or left. It can't just flow straight through the garden bed. And that's slowing the water down and making it sink in, like we discussed before with the champagne tower. Once it moves around that garden bed, it hits the next one down the hill. And again, it has to do the same thing. So you're breaking up that water flow and slowing it down and making it sink in. The other thing you can do that's really helpful is improving the soil on your property and mulching wherever possible. So clay soil doesn't let water soak in very easily, and sandy soil drains really efficiently. And the solution to both of these problems is organic matter. So it makes your soil more like a sponge. And these photos illustrate a no-dig garden bed that I made over the whole front yard. You just, sheet mulching it with cardboard and then put in as much organic matter of all different kinds, manures and mushroom compost, wood chip, everything, and letting it break down just on top of the existing landscape. The worms do all the work for you and move soil material vertically, so you don't have to dig it in or anything. The worms are fantastic helpers, and they produce amazing soil. And this, when the water falls on there now, it's a sponge. It soaks up heaps of water. That is easily the best way of storing water in the landscape, is just straight in the soil. Mulching that every year with at least 10 to 15 centimeters of different kinds of material is the best way of feeding that constantly. So the more you can feed the soil, the better your plants will grow. In fact, the key to a decent garden is you're not really growing plants, you're feeding soil. The plants will look after themselves as long as you can feed the soil. And the way to do that is through mulch. So one year you might put decomposed wood chip on, the next year well-rotted horse manure, the year after mushroom compost, and then the year after that lucerne or hay. All this mixture of materials creates a soil bacteria heaven, really. When I'm growing fruit trees and other plants, if they're not a noxious weed, I just chop them down and leave them under the trees. So I don't put them in the compost anymore. I just add to the mulch. So you don't even have to take them anywhere. It's a lot simpler process. You can also grow living mulch with dense ground covers such as baby sunrose, strawberries, pumpkins, and native violets, and they keep the soil moist and the worms happy. Another interesting use of water in the garden is ponds. These two photos illustrate another sort of a little principle, is making effective use of what you've already got in the landscape. So this is my own garden again. On the top photo, half of my garden was literally a sandstone outcrop. So water fell on that and literally ran off. Apart from that bit in the middle there, which was a little pond that would fill up in the rain. Frogs would breed, tadpoles, and they'd have to grow up pretty quick before it evaporated in the sun. And so I just bricked in around that in a circle and made a pond. And now it's nearly permanently full, and my tank empties into the overflow, eventually reaches the pond as well. So I'm increasing the opportunities for water to stay in my landscape. And the pond is probably the biggest single factor in improving the biodiversity in the garden. So you get a whole lot of insects, lizards. I've even had a red-bellied black living in that pond. You get all sorts of different critters in it. And another good option is an outdoor sink. And this again links you back to grey water and how you're using the water in your property. If you think about something like washing the potatoes, I used to do that in the kitchen. All that water would go down to the black water and I'd never see it again. Whereas now I can use the outdoor sink and put it down this level spreader, which is similar to the one I showed you earlier. And yeah, so when I'm washing the potatoes, I'm watering my kiwi fruit. With building, you can make awnings, fences, and trellises to green up the outside of your house and shade and cool certain areas around the house, like the north facing and the western sides of your house are perfect for this. So deciduous vines will, like this one on this picture, is a grapevine. It provides beautiful shade. It brings the inside outside, so there's a bit of a blurry line between the inside and the deck. And so in summer, the leaves are out. It provides lots of shade, but when the leaves drop in the winter, it lets all the light and heat through the windows, and so you're climate controlling the house without really doing anything at all. This is another example from my own house. This is the western side of my house, so the grapes on the roof again, and I've got a passion fruit on the wall of it. And all those plants down the side, they just create, again, this cooling effect, transpiration. It makes the world of difference to the climate outside your house. I put a water tank also on that wall so the heat doesn't beat against the house wall. It hits the water tank first. And then this final photo on that subject is using all the layers of the forest again. This is the front of my home, and you can see those garden beds on contour at the front there. The massive tree on the left, we've thought about getting that sort of half chopped down, but it provides amazing shade. That's the northwest corner of my house. And so in the afternoon, the sun doesn't beat so hard on my house, and it's just dappled shade, so it still lets a lot of light through. And the plants in the front garden benefit from that, because when it's really like a 40-degree day, they're not getting seared by the direct sunlight. That tree cuts out a good portion of the harmful rays and lets them grow properly. And it's a much more comfortable environment both in the house and outside in the garden. Another way of doing some summer cooling is a green roof. And I took this photo visiting a house in Wollongong. And the actual house is behind me in the photo, or not in the photo. This is the back garden, and they created they built a granny flat down the slope out beyond the back garden, and then built the back garden over the top of it with a green roof, which is a great idea. Now they don't have to look at that building, and the green grass is obviously less heat producing than what could have been there, such as tiles or colour bond. So we talked earlier about making the water move around your house and landscaping for heavy rain. Swales, French drains and spoon drains are perfect for that. So it's breaking this heavy outflows up and getting them to move, either slow down and soak in or move to one side. So these are some swales. I'll just get the pointer back on. I dug these in my back garden, and the pinky looking lines, I sprayed pink on the grass to mark out the contours. So I knew where to dig these ditches. So a swale is just a ditch. The water used to flow from left to right, straight across the garden and off the cliff at the end of my property. And it literally would just flow straight off. I wouldn't see much of it, not much would soak in. And so I dug all these swales on the contours. So now the water flows into the first swale, fills the ditch up with water, overflows into the second one, that one fills up, and so on, all the way down the garden. And so I'm making like bulk stormwater soak in. And these are the same area of land just after I finished with the landscaping and what it looks like now with fruit trees all over it. I filled the paths up. The ditches would now become the paths, and I filled them up with wood chip. And so the wood chip itself soaks up the water. So that's a sponge as well. So as well as the landscape slowing the water down, I'm storing water in the wood chip. And I'll just point out, this is another level spreader. This is the first one I made, and I got really fond of these and put them all over the garden. This is the water from my driveway, which is quite a large driveway. I put a grid across the front of the garage and collected all that water and pipe it down to the back garden. And so, yeah, again, that's a pipe on the dead level with lots of holes drilled in it. And you'll see on the next slide, this is it in action. So you can see all those holes leaking water. I put rocks underneath so that the water, when it falls down, splashes on the rocks and doesn't just erode the garden bed away. I put native violets in that garden bed. So again, a dense ground cover that keeps all the soil together and the garden bed doesn't wash away, even like just ensuring that it doesn't wash away. And then the first swale there on the left is full of water. And so this is on a really heavy rain day. It takes quite a lot of water for you to even notice that the swale's filling up. And I've never got to the third swale. I've never seen the third swale fill up with water. The second one has quite a lot in it. But yeah, it works a treat. And all that water's soaking into the landscape. And these are French drains, and the bottom two are, the top photo is a French drain and the bottom two are spoon drains. So the French drain encourages water that's seeping through the earth to drain away from your house. And the spoon drains encourage surface water to move around your house, all downslope. So a French drain is kind of like a swale in that you dig a ditch, usually about 300 mil deep. If you want water to move around your house, you need the bottom of the ditch to be lower than the earth level inside your house. So if you go underneath your house, find out where the soil level is there, and on the outside, put a French drain that is lower than that. Water that seeps through the earth will hit this French drain, and it's a lot easier for it to go down that French drain than go through your house. And so it'll keep your house dry. It's literally just a ditch with landscaping cloth on the outside. Put a little bit of gravel in the bottom of on top of the landscaping cloth. Put a pipe on top of that, an ag pipe that's got holes all the way down it, and then fill the drain with gravel. And like I said, water takes the path of least resistance, and it will just follow that down the hill to wherever you want it to go. You just need to have a plan that the outflow of that is somewhere you can manage it, and it's not just going to erode the landscape at the end. So if you have the outflow over some rocks or something to break the flow up again, then that's a good thing. Spoon drains are useful where you've got, say, paths down the side of your house. If there's a lot of water running on concrete, or on harder surfaces, you can still have gaps in the pavers or whatever you're using, so that small rainfalls can seep through the pavers. But in heavy rain, you can angle the pavers so that it basically forms a spoon drain and moves the water around your house rather than just sitting there in a big puddle. There are lots of ideas now that you can use for permeable surfaces. So you can use old-fashioned cobblestones. It's a great solution. And there's all sorts of driveway solutions so that you can have a green driveway, but it's still hard enough to drive on and you don't get bogged. And using gravel as well. This is a lot better for making the water soak in and protecting your waterway rather than it just going straight on the road and down the stormwater system. And again, it keeps the landscape hydrated. You can even get permeable asphalt and concrete. So you have what looks like a concrete driveway, but it's got lots of little holes in it that let the water go through. So moving on to using the water in various ways around your garden, wicking beds are an amazing idea for time-poor gardeners. They need to be installed on a dead level pad. They don't work on a slope at all. But if you've got a courtyard that you want to sort of green up a bit, wicking beds are a fantastic solution. So you can either home make them like these ones made out of the intermediate bulk containers, or you can purchase them off the shelf. And so the reservoir, I'll just grab the pointer again. This is one sort of under construction, and the Rio bar is the top of the water and the bottom of the soil. And so where the pots are full of sand, that's the water reservoir. And you put landscaping cloth on top of the Rio bar and up the sides of the wicking bed, and then fill it with soil, and you can grow in it. And the next slide shows an off-the-shelf solution. And so in this photo, the reservoir is this black container. You put these tiles over the top with legs that reach all the way down the bed, and they're sized perfectly to fit in this metal container. And you fill up the legs with something that wicks, like this is perlite. Put your landscaping cloth, the white landscaping cloth, around the edge and on the bottom, and then fill it with soil and grow in it. And so the water in a wicking bed never sees the sunlight, so it doesn't evaporate. And so the plants can pick up the water, or wick up the water they need, rather than you having to guess how much they want by watering them by the top. A rain garden is an awesome way of dealing with bulk overflows and water flows. Councils use these a lot to deal with really large flows, like on streets and in park situations. And this diagram just quickly shows how one operates. So it's essentially a really large garden bed, or a really large French drain kind of thing, with that's filled with gravel and coarse material. So the water seeps right through it. You need plants in there that can withstand the odd flood, so they don't mind being flooded, but then they can survive the intermittent periods in relatively dry, airy soil, very sandy soil. And the next slide shows one in action. So this is a larger scale one. You can see the inflow here on the left. Huge inflow, goes through all these rocks. So the rocks are designed so that the channel does not just erode away. The rocks break up that flow and slow it down a bit. The bulk of the water fills up this pond area, so it looks like a pond when it's in full flow, but it drains really quickly through the landscape. And if it gets to the point where it overflows, they've put rocks all around the overflow. What goes in must come out, so it's going to be the same flow coming out. So they're putting the rocks there and stop that getting eroded away too. And the overflow from the rain garden goes onto the street and down the stormwater system. But you can get a feel for how much water this is soaking into the land, rather than just running off straight down the road. And another great little nifty solution. This is an alternative level spreader to the ones I make. This is just a trough filled with gravel that fills it with water and then spills out evenly in every direction, evenly watering the garden bed. That's a great idea. And so finally, we'll just talk a little bit about Firewise gardens. So the shape of the land, this is extremely property specific. The shape of the landscape really heavily influences the type of fire hazard you have. So if you're on the top of a cliff versus halfway up the hill or the valley floor, you're going to have a very vastly different experience of fire as it moves through. And the landscape heavily impacts the prevailing winds. And so there's I don't want to like say anything out of turn, but everything burns eventually. It's just trying to mitigate that. So if you've got a cool fire, plants that are fire retardant will help you keep that cooling effect and not burn so quickly. And whereas eucalypts contain oils, fire retardant plants are more sappy plants that don't burn so easily. So some trees can resist until they dry out. And most of those trees are deciduous trees, which unfortunately, there's not very, well, I think there's only one native deciduous tree. So you're looking at exotic trees to do this. There are lists of trees published by people who have first-hand experience of how they fare in bushfire conditions. And there's a link to one of those at the end of this presentation. So you can use techniques such as, like I said, the fire retardant plants. You can space plants out to reduce ember attack. So the chances of embers landing on individual plants is a lot lower. And using non-flammable materials around the garden, such as recycled brick and stone, is another great idea. And again, it's this maintenance factor, clearing the leaf litter out of your gutters, clearing leaf litter and drop branches from around your garden, and keeping the landscape hydrated. So yeah, using the grey water as much as possible, building your soil up. It keeps the soil as a sponge and less likely just to set on fire. This photo is one that I saw just after the fires in 2019. And this mulberry tree, the obvious mulberry tree in that photo, it was credited with saving the house. And what I assume is happening here is as the fire is burnt, the mulberry tree is losing all its moisture and transpiring the water out of its leaves and creating a slight microclimate around the house. So it's not as flammable. And so that's quite an amazing photo. And this photo shows a really good example of making a clear zone around the home. So it's not so easy for the fire just to run straight up to the house. And yeah, as I said, the list of resources at the end, I think you're going to get a list of these with web addresses emailed to you after this presentation at some point in the next couple of days. And thank you very much. Oh, I'll just go past, and this is the tank capacity example that I did myself, and just shows you quickly how you can work out the tank volume that you need to cover a drought and how much water you can harvest from your roof. So I won't go through that in detail here. We can send that out hopefully on the email. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. That was very interesting. I love seeing all those examples from your own garden so that we could actually, see them in action and seeing how they work and what you've done in your home.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go through the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please pop them into the Q&A. Click on the icon, open a window, and pop your questions in there so that we can ask them to Mike. We don't have any that have come through yet, which is great. That means you've covered everything. Someone's asking about maintaining water tanks. So that's a good one. If you have an existing water tanks, any tips on how to maintain it?
Sorry, yeah, maintaining the system. Yeah, keeping it. You want to make it as clean as possible before it even gets to the water tank. Maintaining if you need to clean out the inside of a water tank, it's quite a sort of dangerous job in that there could be the air inside the water tank might not be that good, so it's better to get a professional to do it really. And there's not like the hole to get the muck out of the water tank is obviously quite difficult. You have to get it out the top. Not the easiest job in the world at all. It's definitely a two-man job in the first place, but I'd probably be getting a professional in to do it.
Yeah. Yes, fair enough. And how much of the you obviously learned yourself and did most of the work that you've showed us yourself, but how much is DIY possible versus you actually need a professional, like a plumber? For example, if you were getting a water tank, you'd need someone professional to come and install it. So how much can you do yourself?
I installed all my own water tanks. It's not like using stormwater plumbing the stormwater is not so hard. As long as you're not touching the actual stormwater pipes under the ground, you're breaking into the downpipe, into the tank, and then you can put it back into the stormwater. It's not amazingly difficult, but it's worth having a go, I've got to say. But I would, if you're even slightly unsure, just get a professional to do it. It's doing your research really, and that's the same with everything. I've just done my research on so much stuff and worked with people and help them out. So you can join things like permaculture groups and get involved in installing them at someone else's house, and you get a real feel for doing it yourself, and maybe even get people, if you've got friends who are plumbers, get them round for a sort of working bee and work out how to install a water tank. Do a sort of
Yes,
group
true.
learning process.
That's right. And with Google and YouTube these days, you can pretty much learn how to
Yeah,
make everything if you've got
definitely.
the patience and
Yeah, yeah. It's like
um,
there's a will, there's a way. If you really want to do it, you can figure it out. Yeah.
thanks. Someone's asking, do you get algae growing in those level pipes, the ones with the holes
Yeah,
in them?
again, they fill up with leaf detritus and just the general sludge that comes up in gutters. So I've got some of them are up, like I just put an upturn at the end so you can turn the pipe around and it just all flows out one end, and I put a hose in the other end to flush it out.
Mm.
Other ones I've put the caps on the end and I put a hose in and flush it out once in a while.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's fairly easy then.
I actually put tiny holes in the bottom so the water doesn't sit in there and breed mosquitoes. So
Yes,
it
okay. So
flushes
there's
out.
holes at the bottom and at the top.
Yeah, like little tiny holes in the bottom, and as well, like the main ones are on the side, but the little tiny holes in the bottom just weep the water out that sits in there.
Yeah, okay. Great. Thank you. Um, I've got someone saying, so your garden design looks really good for low rainfall and water efficiency, but as we've noticed lately, it's been raining a lot. So how did your garden cope with the excess water, for example, last week?
It's amazing. That's what I did this before the sort of huge rainfalls of the last couple of years. And I was out like I was like a kid in a candy store with the umbrella out watching all of those things work. Like it's like watching the mousetrap game with the marbles running around the circuit. Yeah, you just water's flowing into there, flowing out of there, filling up this. Yeah, it's really cool. It all works. I, I'm amazed myself that it works as well as it does.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. That's what you want.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the everyone's goal is that the garden is fine during droughts and the garden is fine during heavy rain.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Can you remind us what's of the best plants did you mention that were good for either the living mulch or just good at absorbing the excess water?
You want, yeah, living mulch. You want things like baby sunrose. I plant strawberries everywhere. I mean, who doesn't love strawberries? Um, they grow like wildfire all on their own. And if you get, yeah, you get strawberries out of it. I mean, it's great. Pumpkins are another good one in summer for keeping the soil covered. If it's for natives, you've got native violets or pig face is another good one. If you're in dry area, particularly, pig face is fantastic. Baby sunrose loves growing over rocks, so it's good for harsh environments.
Yeah, great, good list, thank you. Um, just having a look now if there's anyone else. Feel free to ask your questions. Um, Yeah, so you mentioned soil amendment and mulching. Any tips on making sure your soil is as healthy as possible?
It's organic matter. It
Mm,
essentially you're not growing a garden, you're keeping a worm farm.
yes.
And I realized that quite early on. The more you can add to your garden in the way of organic matter, the more that it's composting right there in the garden bed, and the more the worms are happy. And if you're keeping it moist, yeah, it's just amazing. You're trying to keep the like the mycelium, the fungi, the bacteria, and the worms all going. So you don't dig it up ever. Otherwise you disturb that system. You just add to the top of it, and the worms do the work for you.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. That's all the questions I've got. So that means you might have answered everyone else's upcoming questions and everyone's ready to go and set up their own water management plans. Any tips on monitoring your water usage in your home? I know you mentioned doing your own water audit of your home. Do you use any devices or anything in a home to measure your energy
No,
usage?
I've actually just gone through this again. I can't remember what, I was at a workshop and they mentioned a water audit. And so I'd done this before I started any of the gardening bit and the house reno. And I thought I should revisit that. And I've got two teenage kids. And so trying to get my two teenage kids to have less than a 5-minute shower is like pulling teeth. But yes, I don't use anything special. I'm literally just timing my kids in the shower. And I know I put a bucket under the shower and see how long it takes to fill up, and I know how many liters that bucket is. So you can work out how much water you're using. So yeah, I'm sort of the water police in the house, but it's I've not got any special things. I just do it the old-fashioned way and catch the water when I'm washing my hands or something and just measure it once and take that as a standard water amount. It doesn't need to be exact. It just needs to be rough.
Yeah, exactly. You just need some basic math and just, you know,
Yeah,
yourself.
as long as you know roughly where you stand, that's great. Yeah.
And for people who don't know anything about you, how did you get into permaculture in the first place? Because it was mentioned that so you used to work in the mining industry and you sort of completely
Yeah.
turned your life around.
Yeah. Well, I used to be a geologist, so I was kind of into the earth, but the way to make money as a geologist is in the mining industry, which is very unfortunate. Um, but a friend just told me, I was wondering what to do with the garden when I started my house renovations. And he said, "Oh, permaculture would be right up your alley. You should check this out." And so I went home and I did all my research again. And I was just lapping it up like, where have you been all my life? I couldn't believe I'd never heard of it before. So it's changed my life completely. It's total 180. So yeah, absolutely. My whole life is following the principles of permaculture really nowadays.
Yes, it's great, great story, inspirational.
Yeah,
Maybe it will inspire some others to go and live and breathe permaculture and sustainability.
yeah. It's actually quite
Um,
difficult in the city, but yeah, it'd be good.
Thank you so much. I think if there's no other questions, we can wrap up early and let people go and have their dinners and um, go to bed. But thank you so much for sharing everything with us. It was really good to hear all your tips, see some like practical photos and get some um, insights into how to actually put things into action. So thank you. And thank you everyone for attending and staying with us all until 7:30 this evening. I hope that you've learnt lots of tips and we'll send you all the resources and the links. So don't worry if you feel like you had quite an information overload. We'll send you some resources that you can go through in your own time. I'll also send you the recording for this webinar and the previous two that we have run and the link to the last one. So we have one more coming up in this series, which will be about how to select your best team, sustainability team to work on your renovations or a new build. And just reminding everyone that we would love to get your feedback in our survey. So there will be a link popping up when you leave the Zoom webinar tonight. And I'll also include that in the email so you can do it in your own time if you don't want to do it tonight. But thank you so much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.